You can't go to your medical doctor about nutrition advice because we never learned anything. We were never trained in nutrition. We were never trained in actual prevention. We were never trained in topics like sunshine and sleep and getting the stress out of our lives. Yet it's all in our medical literature.
Hey everybody, Dr. Josh Axe here. Hey, welcome to my show. I'm here with Dr. Jack Wolfson. He is a cardiologist, and he's the author of The Paleo Cardiologist. He's been a friend of mine for a while. And hey, welcome to the show, Jack.
Thank you, Josh. Pleasure to be on. Love sharing the message of health and wellness and really trying to teach the world that there's a better way than my old way and the way that the 40 partners that I practice with in the cardiology group, there's a better way than pills and procedures, and just love sharing that information. I love what you're doing, and it's an honor to be on with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Well, today I'm really excited to talk about heart health and really get into, hey, what are the best supplements for heart health? What does the ideal diet look like? What is, we'll talk a little bit about the paleo diet here as well, the keto diet and some other things here, to get our show rocking. But to start here, just share with me a little bit about what moved you into this more holistic space, because that's not necessarily your background and training.
No, I'm a board certified cardiologist, as you said. I went through 4 years of medical school, 3 years of internal medicine, 3 years of cardiology, and then I'm a couple years on the job, and I'm getting a little frustrated because the hospital is a revolving door of sickness. Someone comes in with a heart attack, you tune them up, angioplasty, stent, send them back out, and a few weeks later or a few months later, they're back in with another heart attack or heart failure, or more likely side effects from one of the pharmaceuticals that we put them on. And right around that time, when my frustration was reaching a peak, I met the woman who would open up my eyes to reality, to the healthcare system, to get out of that sick care model and move over to the health space and become a DC, a doctor of causation. Now, she's a DC doctor of chiropractic, but she said, you got to become a doctor of cause. And I listened. I mean, what she said made perfect sense. Number one, I saw sickness in my patients. Number two, I saw sickness in my own family and my father dying of a strange disease similar to Parkinson's. And the Mayo Clinic has no idea why he's got it. They got no treatment for him. They have no idea why. And here comes this doctor of chiropractic, Dr. Heather. She tells me exactly why my father got sick, and that's how I changed. And the rest is history. Now I get to be on a show with a guy like you. So all's good.
Yeah, it's amazing. Our wives are our wisdom. I always say that about my wife, Chelsea, who's a DC as well. And so, anytime I'm getting out of line, she has good advice for me, and a lot of wisdom there. So, all right. So let's talk paleo diet. I know you wrote the book, the Paleo Cardiologist, and also, actually, before we do that, I do want to bring this up too, and this was over a year ago, but, the American Heart Association, came out with, their belief system that saturated fat is bad. I mean, still, even today, I know that they said some things that, you shouldn't be getting much saturated fat in your diet. I mean, what is your take on that? Where are they getting that from? And what is your take on saturated fat for heart health?
Well, listen, I mean, it's kind of hard to admit you're wrong. I mean, it was difficult, for me to admit that I was wrong in that old medical system. I was wrong to think that, statin drugs and aspirin and surgeries and stents, that was the answer. I was wrong, and I can admit that now. But for the American Heart Association to kind of march back 50 years of sticking to the saturated fat cholesterol hypothesis, to march back on that, they're not going to do it very easily. The evidence is out there for the benefit of saturated fat in so many different studies, yet they continue to vilify it based on poorly done studies where they're selecting out information where it's really just kind of promoting their agenda. When people talk to me about saturated fat, I say breast milk is loaded with saturated fat. Is that bad for a baby to have, breast milk, or why does milk contain saturated fat? Because that's how you bring animals and humans to life. What about an egg is loaded with sat, fat, and cholesterol because that's how you grow a chicken. You can't grow a chicken eating oatmeal. So I'm a huge fan of saturated fat. For one thing, it cranks up levels of HGL, and we want to have high levels of HDL and functional HDL, and saturated fat does all that when done in a natural way. So when you're eating your free-range grass-fed meats, you're eating your wild seafood, you're eating your coconuts, you're just really benefiting your heart health and brain health and total body health.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more that, and it was interesting too, reading through there. I saw another person who's a cardiologist who was trying to play both sides, and it was interesting to see. He was like, well, they're right that saturated fat is bad, but, coconut is fine, and cacao is fine, and ghee is fine. And I was like, you're listing like every form of saturated fat we recommend. But anyways, it's interesting to think about. And of course, I know that you can still have people can have too much of a good thing. I mean, that can happen, but for the most part, it's not the problem. I mean, you would, I know in what you're teaching, I mean, grains and sugar are the bigger issue, right? When we're talking about what's going on with LDL, especially.
Yeah, most certainly. People, will kind of bash, they'll bash paleo, they'll bash keto, which are actually very similar, of course. But the foundation of my paleo pyramid is vegetables. It's those leafy greens. It is it is all of those different plant foods that our ancestors would have consumed as hunter gatherers. And I know that you are big on the spices, and I know that you're talking about organ meats and eating quality organ meats, which our ancestors always ate, and now nobody does. So to me, it's just common sense. It's just our ancestors ate a certain way. Why try and veer from that? But you can't go to your medical doctor about nutrition advice because we never learned anything. We were never trained in nutrition. We were never trained in actual prevention. We were never trained in topics like sunshine and sleep and getting the stress out of our lives. Yet it's all in our medical literature. In fact, Josh, one of the things when I lecture and I talk about leaky gut, and I show this study from 2007 in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, the biggest cardiology journal in the world, there's a whole big article on leaky gut, and it's linked to congestive heart failure. But I can tell you in 2007, I didn't read that. I was only interested in the next pill, the next procedure, and that's just a fault of conventional medicine.
Well, first off, I applaud you because it's one of those things, and I've said I'm wrong plenty of times in my life, and and have been wrong, but for you to then go and not only change your opinion, but then go and be a spokesperson and a leader in the entire movement of helping people heal their hearts naturally is just really such an awesome thing. I know you and I were talking before this broadcast about bitter foods for heart health. And I just made me think of this with organ meats too. Think about, if you ever eat chicken, any type of liver or organ meat for the most part, they're bitter, right? You have chicken liver, it's a real bitter food. And it just made me think of that food there as well, and sort of that bitterness and how that can help heart health. But let me ask you this. So let's just jump into diet quick. What would you say, like if you have a patient, if you had to lay out for them for heart health, what's the ideal breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, dessert? What would you recommend somebody eat?
Great question. Typically I start off the day with a healthy greens drink. Either it's a fresh greens drink or it's a reconstituted powder, always organic. And that's why, and even in my book, I tell people no matter what diet you follow, make it organic. We all agree on that we can stay away from pesticides and the chemicals in food and do it organically. But I love a greens drink. Certainly I'm a big fan of eggs. I love salmon and eggs and loading all the different spices that are in there. Some days I'll do like my own nut seed cereal combination. So I'll use nuts, seeds, raw cacao, put some nut milk in there, some coconut milk in there, homemade coconut milk. Just take coconut flakes and add water and put it in the blender. So I love that. Lunch is typically a big giant salad, maybe with a can of sardines, maybe with an avocado, maybe both. And dinner typically is somewhat similar to that. It's going to be a lot of vegetables, typically some form of animal-based protein, but sometimes not. Maybe it's just nuts and seeds. We'll do some sweet potatoes. We'll do quinoa. The three things we always are, Josh, is we're always organic, we're always gluten-free, and we're always soy-free. That's how I roll. But then again, the last time I had soy, the only times I'll do soy is when I find organic natto, that Japanese fermented soybean that is extremely, extremely, extremely high in vitamin K2. And this may be one of the secrets to
And it tastes
Japanese longevity.
extremely, extremely bad.
No, 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 no. I know you don't
I,
believe that. I know
no,
you
it's
got,
fine.
and you know it's something you would like too, because I know you're a huge fan of turmeric. Is that there is a company out of New York that does the organic natto, and they have one that they mix in the organic turmeric, and it's absolutely delicious.
That's awesome.
So,
No, no,
yeah.
I've had natto. I don't mind it much. I know some people that don't like it. I use miso for some miso on occasion too. But no, it's great. I know like the vitamin K superfood of the world.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the only time I do it. Obviously, we're both anti soybean oil. Even when organic, there's no role for that. I don't find any anything with soy proteins in there. I stay away from. But I mean that that whole food, that that natural choice, and I mean, and it also has a natural blood thinner in there called natto kinase. Which back in the 1980s, if you came into the emergency room with a heart attack, they gave you a clot buster called streptokinase. This is natto kinase. It works. It's a blood thinner. Now it doesn't work as strongly as the strepto did, leading to hemorrhagic strokes and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a good quality food. But always organic, always gluten free, and always soy free, with that one little caveat. And I think if all you ever did is go organic and gluten free, I think your health will just be tremendous for the vast majority of people. If that's the only changes they made was organic and gluten free, they'll do very well.
I love it. Let's talk about some of the top supplements that you'd recommend. I know there's so many out there that have been recommended from heart health, from D to K to omega 3s to antioxidants and everything in between. When you have a patient come in with heart issues, and feel free to vary it up or go off this a little bit, but
Yep.
What would be the top three or five, or that you typically recommend?
Well, I love supplements, and supplements supplement the healthy lifestyle. And if it was 10,000 years ago, we wouldn't need any of these supplements. But nowadays, the soil, the air, the water, everything is, unfortunately and fatalistically, I hate to sound like a downer here, but those things are all polluted and destroyed. So that's why we got to supplement these things into our lives to help us reclaim our health. Now, the other thing you can do is you can actually get tested on these things. You can order micronutrient testing to see what your deficiencies are. You order the most advanced lab testing in the world, and that's certainly what I do on all my clients out here and all my patients out here in Arizona. Testing to see where their deficiencies are, where they've got the inflammation, where they have the oxidative stress, where they've got the immune system and autoimmune conditions, and testing for leaky gut. I love doing all that stuff. But listen, I'll throw it back to you and say that the bone broth proteins are so healing for the gut. And my wife told me years ago, it's about the gut, the gut, the gut, and you heal and seal that leaky gut, and the bone broth proteins do that. And I know also you're big in the collagen space, and the original supplements were the organs, actually. So if someone had a heart
Yeah.
problem, right, they gave them a heart tablet or they gave them a liver tablet. Well, if you've got a blood vessel issue, and the blood vessels are made up of connective tissue and a lot of different other cells that are in there, but none more important than the protein collagen, well, you take a collagen powder to help give you the nutrients to build up more collagen. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's type 5 and 10 collagen. Well, yeah, different types of collagen make up our cardiovascular wall. So, I love those about them. The other thing too, a lot of people don't know about bone broth is it's high in glucosamine, it's high in chondroitin, it's high in hyaluronic acid, and all of those are in the glycosaminoglycans family. They're not collagen, but they are collagen boosters. They support your body in its own collagen production, which is great, especially when your body's looking to repair and regenerate. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I think collagen is up there on the list. And what are your thoughts on doing omega-3s, fish oils, and some other things that you recommend?
Well, I'm certainly a big seafood eater. I would implore anyone who's vegan or vegetarian, please eat seafood. Like, why can't a vegan eat an oyster? Like, does an oyster have any more or less feelings than a head of cabbage? Please eat seafood, eat oysters, get that omega-3. Omega-3 is so critical. Every study shows that the people with the highest levels of omega-3 naturally have the lowest risk of everything. But I think, good quality omega-3 fish oil supplementation is very beneficial, but you know what? Get tested, see what your levels are. And if you're a big seafood eater, you may not need to. If you're someone who's totally averse to eating seafood, then you may need to supplement with omega-3s. But you mentioned vitamin K. I'm a big fan of vitamin K too, because it is a little difficult to get from food. I love probiotics. Certainly getting probiotics from your food, your fermented foods. You mentioned the miso before is a great source of that, and even natto, as we talked about. Kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, all that stuff can be good there. Big fan of berberine, a big fan of turmeric. The B vitamins to control homocysteine, so the methyl Bs, methylfolate, cobalamin are huge. Digestive enzymes. So many people they just don't digest their food. So I love supplementing that as well. Vitamin C, we talked about building, strong, healthy blood vessels along with collagen. Well, it takes vitamin C to make those enzymes spin. Magnesium, and the other, everyone talks about magnesium. What about potassium? And we test people's potassium levels, and so often they're low. So that's atrial fibrillation, that's blood pressure, that's PACs, PVCs that can all be improved by potassium. So yeah, we got a lot of different supplements. I'm a huge fan of beetroot powder. Things that crank up nitric oxide, L-arginine, L-citrulline, L-taurine. So, some people accuse me of being a supplements pusher, but, listen, obviously you see so much sickness in the world. I'd rather be a supplements pusher than the old pharmaceutical pusher that I used to be.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it depends on the person. Obviously, if somebody's got a lot of emotional stress and high blood pressure, there's a group of supplements versus if somebody's trying to get their HGL cholesterol up and LDL down, it can be different there too. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. But in general, your recommendations, organ meats, collagen, and a lot of them are food-based recommendations. Yeah. But even, these nutrients, magnesium so calming, vitamin K is so critical for the, the function of the heart. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, and turmeric, and I mean, they're all fantastic recommendations there as well. Let me ask you this: if somebody has to consume, let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, "What are the top three, just in general? What would you say are three that you recommend really commonly?" And I know you probably already mentioned it, but what are the three that you would recommend first?
Well, I just finished up a blog post on why everybody should take a multivitamin. So, the multivitamin to me is the foundation of a healthy supplements regimen, a healthy lifestyle. So everybody needs a multivitamin to make sure that they're kind of encompassing it all, to make sure they're getting all the right nutrients and find a quality one at that. I was doing a review and I was looking at some of the big box brand name multivitamins that we all know of. We've all seen the advertisements for it. And just the synthetic, the artificial ingredients, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners. One of them I was reviewing had 3 different forms of cornstarch. I had no idea there were all these different forms of cornstarch, and the titanium dioxides and nickel and tin, things that have like no role in the human body whatsoever. So anyways, multivitamin is one. I love taking probiotics. And let me throw it back out there to berberine. I think berberine is like that Swiss Army knife supplement. And not only does it have massive cardiovascular benefits, anti-cancer benefits, but also anti-aging. So I think that everybody could benefit from berberine from a quality source. And once again, when you go with a reputable company, you can be sure that what is on the label is actually inside the capsule. So you got to be careful where you get your supplements from and make sure you know what you're doing on that, as I know, because you guys have the best of the best. So, go with the people go with the people you trust.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there's a lot of questions. I get questions all the time about supplements. And, I know when before I had a company and created supplements, I remember when my mom was sick and trying to figure out how do I know what brand to buy. And actually, that's what really attracted me early on. It's funny now he's my business partner, but Jordan Rubin, when my mom was sick and before I had my own product line, we always took his product line. And the reason is, I'd read his book, The Maker's Diet, and Patient Heal Thyself. And he wrote another book on digestive function. And I knew he knew what he was talking about. And then I started following him and realized he cared about his own health, about his family's health. He looked healthy at this point. He healed himself of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. So I think that's a great recommendation because there are a lot of brands out there, But yeah, but buying from someone you trust, someone who's knowledgeable, I think it's a great point too. And similar thing, like, let me ask you this: if somebody is looking for a physician to work with, what does somebody look for? So I know that you're in not far from Aspen now. I know, but and where's your clinic today? And then also, like, but what do people look for if somebody's in Indianapolis, Indiana, or Dallas, Texas, or Orlando, Florida? Like what do they need to search for if they're trying to find a doctor that practices like you do?
Well, when I spoke at the Truth About Cancer, and there were a few thousand people in the audience, and you were down there as well, and you were speaking, so I'm at the Truth About Cancer, and I get up there on the stage, and I'm just like talking away, and I said from the stage in front of the 2,000 and tens, if not hundreds of thousands worldwide, that I believe that I'm the best preventive cardiologist on the planet, and there's number one, I believe it to be true. Number two, there's not a lot of competition in the space. So we get emails all the time, and they're like, hey, is there someone like you who practices in Indianapolis or in Boston or in Miami? And I say, if there are, I don't know them, and I would probably know who they are. So I tell people, this is your heart. Get on a plane and come out to Arizona. Come see me in Phoenix, and we'll do the most advanced testing in the world. You'll get in-depth information. You'll get to meet with me. You'll get to meet with my staff. You'll get tremendous follow-up, with myself and my health coaches and my team over here. That's the best I can offer to anybody. Now, that being said, if you're in your area, so I always tell people to find the first thing I would do if I moved to another area would be to find a good chiropractor. I would find a good doctor of chiropractic. And then use that person as my kind of go-to for all things health and wellness. And if I thought that maybe I needed something different, or maybe the doctor of chiropractic thought that I needed something different, well, then they would refer me on to maybe a good local biological holistic dentist, or to a functional medicine MD or DO if need be. But another thing that always bothers me, and I'm sure it does you as well, Josh, is that sometimes you see a person in consultation, and they've seen a quote unquote natural doctor before, yet they were put on antibiotics, they were put on steroids, they were put on some pharmaceutical, and it really frustrates me, because you and I both know that on the natural side, we can do, short of trauma, we can do anything on our space. We can do it. So yeah.
I love referring out to holistic practitioners, but there are some, that just I don't want to get off on a just huge tangent here, but I had somebody come to me. This was last week, and it was actually an old patient of mine. They reached out, and he was having a health issue, and I said, hey, I'm happy to do a call with you. I mean, there were patients of mine before, so got on the phone with them and talked to them, and they said, hey, we went to this other doc, and he told me I had a parasite, and I heard the name of the doc. I'm like, sometimes people get in their thing, and it's like, if he had 100 patients come in, he would tell all of them they had a parasite and put them on a parasite. I mean, it just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But, that's the thing you and I both know. Like, patients are individuals. Like you can't treat everybody the identical way. And that's one of the things I love about, your practice and in Phoenix, is that you guys do that, that custom testing. And this is something that I always did, in my practice, is we did panels for, we did micronutrient testing and organic acids, looking for what are those vitamin mineral deficiencies. We did toxicity testing. We did fatty acid ratio testing. We looked at food sensitivities, all of the things I know are a lot of the things that you're doing out in Phoenix, because those things are game changing. I know for myself, I took the test, and I was training for triathlons a lot of the time, and I was really deficient in just a couple things, but vitamin B2, which I'm like, why was I deficient? And then zinc, but all that training, and I supplemented with them and went bam. And I was just feeling a little lightheaded sometimes. Started doing those, and I was eating really clean. I started using those, bam. I mean, I just, felt so differently. And then I realized for me, I eat healthier than anyone I know alive. And yet I could have a deficiency or two just because of all of our toxic exposures, all the stress in life, traveling all the time, all this stuff adds up. That's one of the things I just love about what you guys do. And so, hey, guys, you can check it out By the way, I'm not being paid for this. I love Dr. Jack. And if I had a family member, my own dad had a heart problem, I'd send him out to Phoenix to see Dr. Jack here. But I just looked this up while we were talking here. It's Wolfson Integrative Cardiology.com. So you can check it out. Wolfson Integrative Cardiology.com, or just Google search Dr. Jack Wolfson Clinic. And, he's around the Phoenix, Arizona area. You can check it out there too. But, anyways, yeah, I mean, that same thing with physicians. But yeah, sometimes it's hard. That's one of the hard things. I was talking to somebody up in middle of the nowhere, Minnesota, the other day, and they were way outside of Minneapolis. Actually, I do have a good friend, Susie Holmes, who's in Minneapolis, and she's a great doc. But anyways, it's hard to find good help sometimes,
Yeah, no, I mean, but and obviously, listen, people can go to your website, they can go to my website, all these different books. There's so much information out there that is wonderful, but you don't know about you individually unless you get tested, and that's where hooking up with a holistic doctor can really make the difference in the individual health. Because obviously, Josh, you can look at you and how healthy you look, but who would ever think, well, hey, listen, there's a deficiency in B12 or B2 in zinc, and maybe just because someone looks great on the outside, you don't know what's going on the inside. Take a look, take at someone like Bob Harper, from America's Biggest Loser.
Yeah.
That guy looked fantastic on the outside, and then he had a massive heart attack. And I can assure you, I mean, obviously that guy's lifestyle, the stress, the lack of sunshine, always in front of the camera, I'm sure poor sleep habits, on and on and on. It's like, I mean, you could have tested that guy and maybe you would have, found tons of inflammation, tons of oxidative stress, leaky gut, food sensitivities, abnormal lipids. You could have seen all that ahead of time. And now, unfortunately, he's a spokesman for a pharmaceutical company instead of being a spokesman for, for Josh Axe, or something, so yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and touching on that last topic, I'll tell you, and this is what I see with physicians today too. It's not always just the diet. Let's just for a minute talk about the stress. Because I think when we're talking about heart conditions, especially, how much does stress play a role? And then, what is your recommendation for patients and people listening on what to do about stress?
Well, I obviously in medical training, we got no discussion at all about stress, but I felt so strongly about it. I have a whole chapter in my book called One Nation Under Prozac about how important stress is for cardiovascular risk. And the answer, of course, is not some pharmaceutical. So, ideally, you get the stress out of your life as much as possible. Try and focus on the things that are really important. If you have a job that's overly stressful, family members that are overly stressful, it's time to take the plunge. I mean, I left the most lucrative cardiology practice as a senior partner out here in Arizona in 2012 to open up my own practice, and everybody thought that I was nuts for doing it. And it was the greatest thing I ever did, aside from marrying my wife. So getting the stress out is very important, being happy in what you're doing. And then from there, there's a company called Heart Math, and they do some really cool things. And there's yoga and meditation and Tai Chi and, really just taking the time to relax, take a vacation, take a staycation. All those things can be, certainly helpful. And then, of course, just by changing your diet, it takes down your stress level, because if you're not all amped up on sugar and grains and other toxic foods, you're naturally going to be a lot more calm. And then, of course, caffeine. I think caffeine is kind of one of these plus minus things. There's certainly tremendous benefit to drinking coffee and black tea and green tea. But you may be someone who's sensitive to caffeine. So, decide whether or not that's right for you.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great recommendations. I think that ultimately, with all the stuff you said too, I think part of it is people need to schedule it and make it a priority too. Whether you're, at yoga or you're walking trails or scheduling lunch with a best friend, whatever it is to reduce stress. I mean, you got to look at your week, and it's got to be a priority. You got to get it in your schedule, and that's key. And really, everybody needs to do it. I know that I made that a priority a few years ago. When my first couple years in practice were such a whirlwind, I realized I was eating good, but man, I was really stressed out. And so just scheduling that time to, allow your body to heal, to reduce stress, I think is big. I want to encourage you guys, check out Dr. Jack's website, Wolfson Integrative Cardiology.com. Also check out his book, The Paleo Cardiologist. And Listen, I know a lot of us have family members who are sick with heart conditions. Lots of us do. And so if you know somebody like that, hey, turn him on to Jack. Again, he's a board certified cardiologist. So that's something I know. Like, I just give you an example. Like my grandma, she's funny. She's 90. And unless you're a board certified cardiologist, she doesn't listen to anybody who's not that. So sometimes there's that level of credibility that's just really important to some people. So make sure to share Dr. Jack's info. Buy somebody that book if they've got a heart issue. Have them read it. I mean, I can tell you so many times over the years, Dr. Jack, I've bought people a book or just sent them a simple article, and months later, all of a sudden they're doing differently. And sometimes people don't like you to tell them to do stuff. Sometimes you share something with them, they'll read it themselves, like, wow, this is really amazing, you should read it. They'll read it, and they kind of convince themselves what they should do. But anyways, it's a good way to help people get healthy.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Sometimes the one-on-one conversation can be difficult, especially when it comes from family members. I mean, here's like draxe.com, and they have millions of followers, and your grandma's like, I'm going to listen to this guy down the street. I've been seeing him for 50 years, But no, it's. I mean, listen. Obviously, the information is out there. My book is a tremendous. I mean, to give someone a gift of health and to give someone, is it a plug for my book? Yeah, it's a plug for my book. But I don't have a problem with that because getting my book into people's hands helps to change lives. I know you've got books. I know you've got plenty in your future, and that's the best gift. What are you going to give to someone? Some lousy food or alcohol, or a cheap sweater? Give them the gift of health and wellness, and at least you did something. You gave them that gift. You gave them the information. What they do with the information is up to them, but at least you told them, what the real truth is.
Yeah, that's great. Well, again, Dr. Jack, hey, thanks so much for being on the broadcast today. And everybody, hey, thanks for listening here to this week's podcast. We'll be back next week with another one. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed in this podcast are not medical advice and have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. In some cases, individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein.